Welcome to Unlocking Passion. Men Report. Let's begin with a new story. Richard Malone stood in the doorway of what should have been his bedroom and stared at the empty space where furniture used to be. The flat-screen television was gone. The jewelry box he had bought for Araya sat open and hollow on the dresser, every piece of gold and every gemstone missing. Her clothes had been torn from the closet. Only wire hangers remained, gently swaying in the breeze from the open window. His wallet lay on the kitchen counter, emptied of cash and credit cards. His bank statements, which he had kept in a drawer, were gone. When Rick checked his phone and opened his banking app with trembling fingers, the screen showed a balance that made his stomach drop: $473.18. Everything else, $419,526.82, was gone. The woman who had promised to heal his broken heart, who had held him while he cried over his dead son, who had whispered that they would grow old together on a beach in Thailand, had vanished as completely as smoke in the wind. Richard Malone, 61 years old, stood in a half-empty house that legally belonged to someone else, in a country where he had no protection, and realized with devastating finality that the new life he had built was nothing more than an elaborately staged scam, and he had paid for every scene. Richard Malone had never planned to leave Missouri. For 37 years he had built a life in St. Louis that made sense: a successful construction company, a comfortable house in a quiet suburb, and a son named Danny who made him prouder than anything else he had ever achieved. Rick had married young, his high school sweetheart Sarah, but the marriage ended after 12 years when she decided she wanted something different from what a construction manager's salary could offer. The divorce was bitter but quick, and Rick threw himself into work and into raising Danny, who was 8 at the time. Danny had been everything to Rick. They went to Cardinals games together, fished on weekends at Table Rock Lake, and worked side by side on construction sites as soon as Danny turned 16. When Danny graduated from Missouri State with a degree in civil engineering, Rick felt that every sacrifice had been worth it. His son would have a better life, a professional career, opportunities Rick had never had. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in October 3 years earlier, a drunk driver ran a red light on Highway 40 and killed Danny instantly. He was 29 years old. Rick's world ended that day. The grief was paralyzing, suffocating, endless. He stopped going to construction sites. He stopped answering calls. He sat in his house for weeks, surrounded by photographs of Danny, unable to process the unfairness of it all. How could a good boy, a smart boy, who had done everything right, be erased in a single moment by someone else's terrible decision? His business partners noticed his absence and offered to buy his shares. Rick agreed without negotiating. He did not care about the money. What was the point? He sold his house 6 months later because every room reminded him of Danny. Every corner was a memory that felt like a knife. By the time he turned 60, Rick had roughly $500,000 in the bank from the sale of the business and the house, a rundown truck, and absolutely no idea what to do with the rest of his life. He felt hollow, aimless, and desperately lonely. That was when he started reading about Thailand. It began with a YouTube video that appeared in his recommendations, something about retirees moving to Southeast Asia. Rick watched it out of boredom, but something about it spoke to him. The men in the video talked about affordable living, beautiful weather, friendly people, and the chance to start over completely in a place where nobody knew your history, a place where grief did not follow you like a shadow. Rick began researching obsessively. He joined Facebook groups for American expats in Thailand, read forums about visa requirements and living costs, and watched dozens of videos about cities like Pattaya, Hua Hin, and Chiang Mai. The idea of living near the beach in a country where his savings could last for decades, where he might rebuild some kind of life, began to feel less like a fantasy and more like a plan. In January, 2.5 years after Danny's death, Rick booked a one-way flight to Bangkok. He packed 2 suitcases with clothes, sold or donated everything else, and left Missouri without looking back. There was nothing left for him there except memories that hurt too much to stand inside. When Rick's plane landed on a humid evening in January at Suvarnabhumi Airport, he felt something unexpected. Not exactly happiness, but the absence of crushing sadness. For the first time in years, he was not thinking about Danny every single second. He was thinking about what came next. He took a taxi to Pattaya, a beach city he had read about extensively. The ride was overwhelming, highways packed with cars and motorcycles, signs in Thai script, street vendors selling food from carts. The humid air pushed through the taxi's air conditioning. Everything felt foreign and chaotic and somehow exactly what Rick needed. He had rented a small condo near Jomtien Beach for 6 months through a website. The place was simple: 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a balcony overlooking a side street, but it cost only 15,000 baht a month, about $450. Rick could easily afford that. His first weeks in Thailand were spent simply existing. He walked along the beach every morning, ate cheap Thai food in local restaurants, and sat in air-conditioned cafes reading books on his tablet. The heat was oppressive, the language barrier frustrating, but slowly Rick began to feel something like peace. The grief was still there, always there, but it felt less suffocating. He could breathe again. But the loneliness remained. Rick sat on his balcony in the evenings, watching the sunset over the sea and feeling the weight of being completely alone. He had no friends here, no family, no connections. He was 60 years old and starting over in a country where he knew nobody and understood nothing. That was when he began spending more time online looking for community. Rick found the Thailand Expat Support Group on Facebook in early March, about 6 weeks after his arrival. The group had more than 12,000 members, mostly Western men living in Thailand or planning to move there, sharing advice about visas, healthcare, and navigating Thai culture. Rick lurked for weeks before posting anything, reading the stories and questions of other people. One evening, sitting on his balcony with a beer, Rick finally posted something honest. "I've been in Pattaya for 2 months now. Beautiful place, but I'm struggling with loneliness. I lost my son a few years ago and moved here hoping for a fresh start. Some days are better than others. Is anyone else dealing with grief while trying to rebuild? How do you handle it?" The post got a few polite responses, condolences, suggestions to join expat meetups, recommendations for therapists in Bangkok. Rick appreciated them, but he did not feel any real connection. Then, late that night, he received a private message from someone named Araya Tavanshai. Her profile picture showed a Thai woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The message was simple, but it felt sincere. "I'm very sorry about your son. I know grief. I lost my father when I was young. It never goes away. But it gets softer. I also live in Pattaya. If you want someone to talk with, I am here. Sometimes talking helps. I can help you smile again." Rick stared at the message for a long time before replying. Something about the way she wrote, broken English but genuine feeling, touched him. "Thank you," he typed back. "That means a lot to me. I'd like to talk if you have time." They messaged each other for more than 2 hours that night. Araya asked about Danny, what he was like, what had happened, how Rick was coping. She did not offer empty cliches or try to fix anything. She simply listened, or rather, she read and responded with empathy. She told Rick about losing her father when she was 14, how it changed her family, how her mother still cried sometimes even after 20 years. "Grief is like ocean," she wrote. "Some days calm, some days big wave, but always there. We learn to swim." Rick felt something shift inside him. For the first time since Danny's death, someone seemed to truly understand. They continued messaging every day. Araya told him she was 34 years old, worked as a receptionist at a small hotel in Pattaya, and lived with her mother in a modest house on the outskirts of the city. She was divorced, had no children, and described herself as traditional and family-oriented. She sent photos of herself at Buddhist temples, at the beach, and with her mother at what looked like a family gathering. After a week of constant messages, Araya suggested they meet in person. "You come my hotel for coffee. I like meet you face to face. I think you good man. You deserve be happy again." Rick agreed immediately. They met on a Saturday afternoon in the hotel lobby where Araya worked, a modest 3-story building near Pattaya 2nd Road. The lobby was small but clean, decorated with potted plants and Thai artwork. Araya was waiting in a little seating area, and when Rick walked in, she stood up and gave him a traditional Thai way, pressing her palms together and bowing slightly. In person, she was lovely, not in a flashy way, but in a way that felt real. She wore simple clothes, a blue blouse and jeans, and minimal makeup. Her smile was warm, and her eyes held genuine kindness. "You Rick?" she asked, her accent heavy but her tone friendly. "That's me," he said, suddenly nervous. "It's nice to finally meet you." "You too. You want coffee? Tea?" They sat in the hotel cafe area and talked for 3 hours. Araya asked about his life in Missouri, what he missed, what he did not miss. She told him about growing up in Nakhon Ratchasima, moving to Pattaya for work, and caring for her aging mother. She laughed easily, a sound that made Rick feel lighter. She touched his arm gently when he talked about Danny. Her eyes filled with compassion. "You good father," she said softly. "He lucky have you. He watching you from heaven now. He want you be happy." Rick felt tears sting his eyes. No one had ever said something like that to him before, at least not in a way that felt real. When they parted that afternoon, Araya hugged him, a quick but warm embrace. "You come see me again, yes? I like talk with you." Rick nodded, unable to find words. He left the hotel feeling something he had not felt in years: hope. If this story has already shocked you, please subscribe to our channel for more true crime and romance scam documentaries from Southeast Asia. These stories reveal the devastating reality of romance fraud, and you could help someone you know avoid making the same mistakes. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Over the next month, Rick and Araya saw each other almost every day. She finished her shift at the hotel, and they met for dinner at local Thai restaurants where she taught him how to eat papaya salad without dying from the spice. Or they walked along Jomtien Beach while the sun went down, talking about everything and nothing. Araya was easy to be with. She demanded nothing, pushed for nothing beyond what Rick was ready to give. She simply existed beside him, filling the silence with her presence. One evening, while they were sitting in a beachside restaurant watching fishing boats return for the day, Araya asked him a question that caught him off guard. "Rick, you ever think about having family again? Not replace your son, never replace. But have someone care for you. Have home. Have love again?" Rick looked at her, surprised. "I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. After Danny, everything felt over, you know." She nodded slowly. "I understand. But you still young. You still have life to live. You good man. You deserve happiness. You deserve someone who loves you." The way she said it, looking at him with those earnest eyes, made Rick's chest tighten with emotion. "What about you?" he asked. "Do you want that?" Araya smiled gently. "Yes. I want family. I want husband who is good man, who cares for me, cares for my mother. I want simple life, not rich, just happy." The implication was clear, even though neither of them said it directly. They were talking about each other, about a future together. By the end of April, 3 months after they had first messaged, Araya had become the center of Rick's life. She introduced him to her mother, a small elderly woman who spoke no English but smiled warmly and served him homemade Thai food with obvious pride. Rick brought flowers and a gift, a silk scarf he had carefully chosen, and the mother nodded approvingly and said something in Thai that made Araya blush. "She says you are gentlemen," Araya translated. "She says I am lucky." Rick felt a wave of pride. He was being welcomed into a family, something he had lost when Danny died. Soon afterward, Araya began staying overnight at Rick's condo. It happened gradually. First one night, then two, then most of the week. She brought a small bag of clothes, a toothbrush, toiletries. She cooked for him, cleaned the condo, and filled the space with warmth and life. Rick had never been happier. One night, lying in bed with the fan turning slowly above them and the sound of traffic drifting in through the window, Araya turned to him with a serious expression. "Rick, I need tell you something." His heart sank, preparing for bad news. "What is it?" "My mother. She's sick. Doctors say her heart not strong. She must take medicine every day. Very expensive medicine. I try pay, but my salary from hotel not enough." Rick sat up. "How much does the medicine cost?" "Maybe 20,000 baht every month, maybe more." Rick did the quick math. "About $600. It was manageable. "I can help with that," he said without hesitation. "You shouldn't have to worry about that alone." Araya's eyes filled with tears. "Really? You do that?" "Of course. Your mother is important. If we're going to be together, she's my family too." Araya threw her arms around him and cried softly against his shoulder. "You best man I ever meet." "Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much." It was the first of many financial requests, although Rick did not see it that way at the time. He saw it as caring for the woman he was falling in love with and the family he thought he was gaining. In June, 6 months after Rick arrived in Thailand, Araya brought up the idea of buying land. They were driving back from a weekend trip to Hua Hin, a quieter beach town south of Pattaya that Rick had fallen in love with. The roads were cleaner, the beaches less crowded, the atmosphere more relaxed. Rick had mentioned wanting to live somewhere like that eventually, a place where he could settle permanently, build a simple life, maybe even build a small house. "You really like Hua Hin?" Araya asked during the drive. "Yeah. It feels more peaceful than Pattaya. More like what I imagined when I decided to move here." Araya was quiet for a moment, then said, "Maybe we buy land there, build house, make real home for us." Rick looked at her. "Buy land? Is that even possible?" "Yes, but..." She hesitated. "In Thailand, foreigners cannot own land, only condo. But if I buy land, we can build house together. It be our home." Rick had heard about that restriction in expat forums. Foreigners could not own land in Thailand, only structures built on it, and even that was complicated. The usual workaround was buying property through a Thai spouse or partner. "How much would land cost?" Rick asked. "Depends where. In Hua Hin maybe 2 million baht, maybe 3 million. If we find good price, maybe less." Rick did the math. 2 million baht was around $60,000. 3 million was around 90,000. It was a significant portion of his savings. But if it meant having a permanent home, a place to build a life with Araya, it felt worth considering. "Let me think about it," he said. Over the next few weeks, Araya brought up the idea again and again, always gently. She showed him listings on Thai real estate websites, pointed out plots of land when they drove around, talked about how lovely it would be to have their own space, plant a garden, and let her mother come stay comfortably. Rick found himself warming to the idea. What was he saving the money for anyway? He had no one to leave it to. Danny was dead. He had no other family. If he was going to spend the rest of his years in Thailand, why not invest in a real home? In early July, Araya found a plot of land in a small village about 20 minutes outside Hua Hin. It was 800 square meters, about 1/5 of an acre, surrounded by other small houses and rice fields, with a view of distant hills. The asking price was $72,000. "It perfect," Araya said, her eyes shining with excitement. "We build small house, have garden. You will like, yes?" Rick looked at the land, flat, quiet, peaceful, and pictured a simple wooden house, a veranda where he could drink coffee in the mornings, a garden where Araya could grow vegetables and flowers. It felt like the fresh start he had been searching for. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." They met with the landowner, a middle-aged man who spoke limited English. Araya handled all the negotiations in Thai. Rick transferred 2.4 million baht from his account to Araya's, and she bought the land. The deed, of course, was in her name only. Rick had no legal claim to it, but he trusted her. They were building a life together. What was his was hers, and what was hers was his. Or so he believed. The construction of the house took 4 months. Rick put another $90,000 into the project, hiring contractors, buying materials, furnishing the space. Araya managed everything, coordinated with workers, chose tiles and paint colors, supervised the building. Rick was impressed by her competence and grateful that she handled details he did not understand. The house was modest but charming, a single-story structure with 2 bedrooms, an open living and kitchen area, a covered veranda, and a small garden. The style was simple Thai design, with wood accents, large windows for airflow, and ceiling fans instead of air conditioning to save money. Rick loved it. It felt like home in a way nothing had since Danny died. They moved in at the end of October, almost exactly 3 years after Danny's death. Rick felt the symbolic weight of the timing, as if he were finally moving forward for real. Araya made the house feel alive. She planted jasmine and bougainvillea in the garden, hung brightly colored curtains, and cooked elaborate Thai meals in the new kitchen. Her mother visited often, sitting on the veranda and smiling at Rick, even though they could not communicate beyond basic gestures. Life felt good. Rick woke every morning to the sound of roosters and birdsong, spent his days reading on the veranda or helping Araya with little projects around the house, and fell asleep each night feeling grateful. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Araya started asking to manage more of Rick's finances. "You not understand Thai bank," she said one day. "Let me help. I take care bills. Make sure everything paid on time." Rick hesitated, but eventually agreed. She was better at navigating the language and the systems. He gave her access to his online banking, showed her his bank card PIN, and let her handle utility payments and other expenses. Then came more requests for money. Her mother needed a procedure for her heart condition, 50,000 baht. Her younger brother needed help with a business loan, or he would lose his motorcycle taxi license. The roof on her mother's house needed urgent repairs after a storm, 40,000 baht. Each time Rick transferred the money without much questioning. They were a family now. That was what families did. They helped each other. But Rick's savings were shrinking at an alarming rate. By December, barely 2 months after moving into the new house, he had less than $150,000 left. He had spent almost $300,000 in less than a year. One evening, Rick checked his bank account on his phone and felt a shock of panic. At this rate, his money would be gone in another year, maybe 2. He had to talk to Araya about slowing down, about being more careful. But when he brought it up, she looked hurt and defensive. "You think I steal from you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You think I use you?" "No, that's not it. I care for you. I cook, I clean, I make home for you. My mother's sick, my family need help, and you my husband. That what husband do? We're not technically married, Rick pointed out gently. Araya's face crumpled. You not want marry me? That's not what I said. I'm just saying we need to be careful with money. She cried that night, telling Rick he did not understand Thai culture, did not understand family obligation. She said she felt like he did not trust her, did not love her the way she loved him. Rick felt terrible. He had not wanted to upset her. He had only wanted to be responsible. The next morning, she was cold and distant. Rick apologized repeatedly, reassuring her that he loved her and trusted her. Eventually she softened, and things returned to normal. But the conversation planted a seed of doubt in Rick's mind, one he desperately tried to ignore. In mid-January, almost exactly a year after Rick arrived in Thailand, Araya suggested a weekend trip to Bangkok. You never really see Bangkok, she said. We go see temples, see market, have nice dinner, like holiday. Rick agreed. He had only passed through Bangkok briefly when he first arrived, and had spent most of his time in Pattaya and Hua Hin. A weekend trip sounded nice. They took a bus from Hua Hin to Bangkok on Friday morning, checked into a budget hotel near Khao San Road, and spent the day being tourists. They visited Wat Pho with its giant reclining Buddha, walked through the Chatuchak weekend market, and ate street food from vendors along the Chao Phraya River. Araya was affectionate and happy, holding Rick's hand, taking selfies, laughing at his attempts to bargain with market vendors. That night, they had dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. Bangkok spread out beneath them in a sea of lights, and Rick felt content. This was his life now: travel, adventure, companionship. He had come so far from the broken man who had left Missouri a year earlier. On Saturday evening, Araya suggested that Rick visit one of Bangkok's famous markets alone the next morning while she went to see a friend. I not see her long time, Araya explained. She live Bangkok. We worked together before. You mind? Of course not, Rick said. I'll explore the city a little. We can meet for lunch. On Sunday morning, Rick wandered through the Chatuchak market again, bought a few souvenirs, and texted Araya around noon to ask where she wanted to meet. She replied that her friend had a family emergency and that she needed to stay longer to help. You go back Hua Hin without me, she wrote. I come tomorrow. Sorry, darling. Rick felt disappointed but understanding. These things happened. He took an afternoon bus back to Hua Hin alone and arrived at the house in the early evening. The moment he unlocked the front door, he knew something was wrong. The living room felt different. Emptier. Rick walked slowly through the house. His heart began to pound. The flat-screen television they had bought together was gone. Araya's jewelry box stood open and hollow on the bedroom dresser. Her clothes had been removed from the closet. The laptop Rick barely used but kept on a desk was missing. In the kitchen, his wallet lay on the counter, emptied of cash and credit cards. His bank statements, which he had kept in a drawer, were gone. With shaking hands, Rick pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. He stared at the screen, unable to process what he was seeing. Balance, $473.18. Everything else was gone. Transferred, withdrawn, vanished. Rick tried calling Araya. The number rang once, then went to a generic voicemail. He texted her. No answer. He called again and again. Nothing. He sat down on the floor of the empty bedroom, surrounded by wire hangers and silence, and felt his entire world collapse for the second time in 3 years. Rick went to the local police station the next morning, barely able to speak coherently. The station was a small one-story building with peeling paint and a Thai flag hanging limply outside. A young officer sat behind a desk and looked bored until Rick stumbled in, wild-eyed and desperate. I need to report a theft, Rick said, his voice shaking. My partner, she took everything. My money, my property, everything. The officer, who spoke decent English, took notes and asked questions. Where did Rick live? What had been taken? How much money? Was the woman his wife? Not legally married, Rick said. But we lived together. We built a house together. She had access to my bank account because I trusted her. The officer's expression shifted from professional concern to something more skeptical. You gave her bank card? Yes. You gave her password? Yes. You gave her permission use account? Well, yes, but not to take everything. The officer sighed. Sir, if you give permission, that not theft. That relationship problem. What about the house? I paid for it. House in her name? Yes, but then it her house. Thai law. Foreigners cannot own land. Rick felt like he was drowning. So you can't do anything. We can make report. But I tell you now, this very difficult case. You gave her access. No force, no crime. Rick left the police station feeling hollow and desperate. He called a lawyer in Bangkok, one another expat had recommended, and explained the situation over the phone. The lawyer listened patiently, then delivered the same judgment. I'm sorry, Mr. Malone, but you have no legal recourse. The property is in her name. The bank account had shared access, which means she had legal authority to withdraw funds. Unless you can prove coercion or fraud, which is extremely difficult, there is nothing actionable here. So she just gets away with it? I'm afraid so. This is, unfortunately, common. My advice is to accept the loss and be more careful in the future. Rick hung up and sat in the empty house, staring at the walls he had paid for in a place that no longer belonged to him. Over the following week, Rick became obsessed with finding Araya. He hired a private investigator in Bangkok, a man named Krit, who demanded 25,000 baht up front, money Rick had to borrow from an expat friend. Within 3 days, Krit delivered his findings. Araya was not who she had claimed to be. Her real name was Araya Tavorchai. But she was not a simple hotel receptionist. She had a history, multiple relationships with foreign men, several properties purchased in her name, several vanished partners. Krit found social media accounts she had hidden from Rick. Photos showed her with different Western men over the previous 5 years. Always the same pattern: cozy couple photos, beach vacations, construction projects, then nothing. The men vanished from her feed and were replaced by new faces. Krit also tracked her location. She was in Phuket, staying at a luxury resort, accompanied by a younger Thai man. Krit sent photos. Araya in designer clothes, sunglasses, by the pool with cocktails, laughing. She looked carefree, happy, untouched. There was no trace of Rick in her digital life. No photos, no mentions, no acknowledgement that he had ever existed. The investigator uncovered something even more devastating. Araya's mother was not sick. The medical bills Rick had paid were fabrications. The procedures, the medication, the emergency treatments, all lies. The mother was alive and well and living in a new house in Nakhon Ratchasima that Araya had bought with Rick's money. Rick sat with that information for days, cycling through rage, grief, and crushing humiliation. He had been so careful after Danny's death, so protective of his heart. And yet he had walked straight into a trap, blinded by loneliness and the promise of healing. One night, drunk on cheap whiskey in the empty house, Rick looked through the Facebook group where he had first met Araya. He found his original post from a year earlier about grief and loneliness. Scrolling through the comments, he found other men who had made similar posts about loss, loneliness, and starting over. Some had replies from accounts that looked like Araya's. Different names, same tactics, comforting messages, offers to help, promises of understanding. She had hunted in that group, systematically targeting vulnerable men. Rick was only one of many. Richard Malone now lives in a small rented room behind a guest house in Jomtien, just outside Pattaya. His friend Gary, a British expat who runs the guest house, offered him a job doing maintenance work and helping with check-ins. The pay is minimal, 20,000 baht a month, about $600, but it includes free lodging and meals. It is enough to survive. Rick works every day fixing broken air conditioners, painting walls, chatting with tourists who stay at the guest house. He is now 62, his hair grayer, his face more weathered. He does not talk much about what happened unless someone asks directly. When they do, he is honest. "I lost everything to a woman I thought loved me," he says simply. "Hundreds of thousands of dollars, a house, and whatever dignity I still had." Most people respond with sympathy. Some offer advice he no longer needs. A few dismiss him as foolish, though they are usually polite enough not to say it directly. Rick has started warning other expats, especially those who have recently arrived or are grieving. When he sees posts in Thailand groups about loneliness or looking for companionship, he sends private messages. "Be careful," he writes. "Protect yourself. Don't let grief make you vulnerable. I learned that the hard way." Some people appreciate the warning. Others ignore him. Rick understands that. He would have ignored himself too a year earlier. When you are drowning in loneliness, someone offering a lifeline looks like salvation, not a trap. Last month, Rick saw Araya in Pattaya. She was walking through the Central Festival shopping mall with the same Thai man from Krit's photos. She was carrying bags from expensive stores and wearing jewelry Rick did not recognize. She walked right past him without any sign of recognition, as if he were invisible. Rick did not approach her. What would have been the point? Instead, he went back to the guest house, sat on the small veranda outside his room, and thought about Danny. He wondered what his son would think of him now, broke, alone, working a minimum-wage job in a foreign country at 62. He hoped Danny would understand. He hoped Danny would forgive him for being so foolish, for trusting so completely, for believing that healing could come so easily. "I didn't fall for her beauty," Rick told a journalist who interviewed him last week for an expat newsletter. "I fell for the hope she sold me. The idea that I could have a family again, that I could belong somewhere, that someone cared whether I lived or died. That hope cost me everything." The journalist asked whether he regretted moving to Thailand. Rick thought about it for a long time before answering. "No," he said finally. "I regret trusting the wrong person, but I do not regret trying to start over. The mistake was not coming here. The mistake was believing someone else could heal me. You have to heal yourself. Nobody else can do that for you." Richard Malone will spend his remaining years in Thailand, doing small jobs, living simply, and carrying the weight of an expensive lesson. He has no savings, no assets, no security. But he is still here, still surviving, still warning others. Because if his story can keep even one person from making the same mistake, then maybe the loss was not completely meaningless. Maybe there is a small redemption in that. If Rick's story touched you, please subscribe and share this video with anyone who might be vulnerable to romance scams. These predators target grief, loneliness, and hope, and they are devastatingly effective. Awareness is our best defense. By sharing these stories, we protect each other. Stay vigilant. Trust your instincts. And remember, true love does not require access to your bank account.